What is going on, everyone? In today's video, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite springtime baits. Basically from ice out until right around when fish start to spawn, whether it's a largemouth or a smallmouth, this is going to be one of my favorite baits to throw because it gets a lot of bites and it gets some really big bites. But before we dive into this video and kind of share with you guys the bait that I'm going to be talking about, I want to do a couple housekeeping things. Very first thing, if you guys have not already signed up for the May 8th Lake St. Clair meetup, go down in the description and sign up for that event. And what's really cool, as a non-boater, you still have the opportunity, even if you don't have a boat, you don't have a partner, to get in the boat and get on Lake St. Clair. So go down there, sign up. It's first come, first serve for non-boaters. For boaters, just sign up so I know how many people are gonna be there. $10 per guy, biggest 5 fish by length per boat. And it's just gonna be a really fun event, 100% payout. I'm not trying to take anyone's money, just kind of have everyone show up and have a good time on Lake St. Clair, one of the best times of the year. Again, that's May 8th. Also, I'm kind of curious because you guys are really digging these like really nerdy style videos where I do deep dives on baits. Who do you guys like to watch? What other YouTubers do you guys enjoy watching? Fish the Moment, Tactical Bassin, Alex Rudd, Mikey Balls. Who do you guys like to watch on YouTube? I'm just curious because I want to know what kind of content you guys actually really enjoy watching so I can put out more of that content. So go down there in the comment section. Let me know who you guys like to watch. Who are your favorite YouTubers to watch? Kind of in the fishing realm, but if it's not the fishing realm, who do you guys watch just in general? Let me know in the comment section below. I think it's going to be a little bit interesting to see who you guys watch and kind of see what you guys like to watch on the YouTubes. Without further ado, let's kind of dive into my favorite springtime bait that catches a lot of big fish, whether it's a largemouth, a smallmouth, or any sort of fish in the lake. This bait here is going to catch them, and that bait is the Berkeley fritz side. It is a flat-sided crankbait. And I'm not going to pretend like I've thrown a fritz side forever and ever. I just picked some up last spring and started throwing them around, but I had a lot of success in years past, for the past like 5 or 6 years, on flat-sided crankbaits from other brands. And it's just a really effective technique, and I want to share with you guys how, when, where I throw it, and why I think it's such an effective tool in the springtime. Now, unless you guys have been sleeping under a rock, or maybe you don't follow tournament fishing, you've probably heard of the Berkeley fritz side. Sort of taken the market by storm ever since that Knoxville tournament a couple years ago, and then Sam Rayburn was won last year by John Cox fishing a fritz side, and then he almost won again down in Knoxville on Loudon. Just a really, really phenomenal springtime bait, and it catches a lot of big fish. Now, the reason for that is because the flat side of this bait, the flatter sided profile, give this a really tight wobble. So a lot of times in that springtime, when that water is starting to rise, when that water is starting to warm up, those fish will respond better to a flatter sided bait with a tighter wiggle than they will your standard really hard wobbling, wide wobbling square bill style crankbaits. So these flat sides are getting a lot of attention because they get a lot of fish to bite, especially in colder water situations. As you guys can see, there's flat sides on this bait, which gives it a really tight shimmy and wobble and unique action coming through the water. Another big player on a flat side is that most of the flat sides on the market, the hooks don't rattle, have virtually no rattle or maybe like a slight one knocker. So they're really, really subtle style baits. The reason a flat side's so effective for me is that I can cover a lot of water and I can get fish to bite when they kind of move off other patterns. Some of the best days I've ever had on a flat side have come when those fish start to move off other techniques, whether I'm throwing a swim bait or I'm throwing a jig or I'm throwing a Ned rig and getting those fish to bite in cleaner water situations. When you get that heavy rain, your water starts to rise and maybe get a little bit off colored. That's some of the best days I've ever had on a flat-sided crankbait. And the reason for that is it's a little bit more aggressive an approach. I mean, it does have a wiggle and a wobble and it deflects and it moves and it draws fish to the bait, but it is still subtle enough to get those fish to bite even in cold water when they're lethargic and they don't want to bite other techniques. So I think that's kind of what makes a flat side so effective. It is an aggressive technique. It is an aggressive approach from the sense that it's a crankbait, from the sense that it moves and deflects and draws fish to it, triggers their reactionary nature to come out and smash that bait, but it's not as subtle as like a swim bait. It's not as subtle as a Ned rig or a jig where you're just kind of slowly dragging it in front of their face. And so it's sort of that crossover, as opposed to like your standard bigger body square bills, which have a really, really hard hunting, wide moving action and deflect really wide and they move. A lot of rattles, a lot of noise and aggressiveness coming through the water, which is the other end of the spectrum. So a flat side sort of fits in that in between for me. Now, like I mentioned, some of my best days on the flat side have come when I'm moving off of other techniques. And I think the reason for that is this is a technique that is sort of that in between, but it also triggers those fish to bite best in that sort of slightly stained to rising temperature water. I've never had a great day when the water temps are falling. With a flat side, this is more of like a springtime technique. Water temps are rising, these fish are getting more aggressive. The water's actually coming up and getting slightly stained. That's when a flat side really plays for me, as opposed to like falling water, cooling water. Those fish just don't seem to kind of react to a flat side quite as well. And I kind of want to touch on a couple colors, because color isn't a huge factor for me, believe it or not, with a flat side. I should keep it really, really simple. So my main colors are obviously your crawfish style colors. I think this is called Spray Tan by Berkeley, and it's basically your brown back, yellowish, chartreuse sides, and orange belly. Really, really cool color. And then this is just like your spring craw color, brown back, chartreuse sides with some lines, and an orange belly. It's basically virtually the same color with slight variation. And I'll also throw like a more red color, and this is called your Special Red Craw. Now this really shines in that dirtier water situation, when that water is getting like really, really muddy. After really heavy rain, when things start to get blown out, that's when I'm gonna go to those darker colors, your darker reds, your darker browns. But I keep it really, really simple for the most part. These are probably my go-to colors. Just that, you know, brown back, chartreuse sides, and a little bit of orange on the belly are my go-to colors. If that water is getting clean, or if it's a really clean fishery, I will go to some of your more natural colors, but it's not something I do a whole ton of. With like your honey shag color, which is sort of that off-white side, a black back, it'll draw those fish to the bait. And if the water is super, super clear, like if I'm fishing on the Great Lakes where that water is really clear, but I want to fish sort of an aggressive flat-sided bait, I might even pick up the Morning Dawn color, which is virtually translucent with that brown back on it. Really, really cool, simple color selection. My most predominant colors are your Spray Tan and Spring Craw color. And that's really where I'm going to pretty much focus my efforts, unless I absolutely have to change. Now the size that I'm throwing, the most common size for me is that size 7, which dives 5 to 7 feet. That really up here in the north is where those fish really tend to congregate or eat a fritz side or flat-sided crankbait the best. I'm going to be going down sort of those banks with chunk rock or that sand, mud to gravel mix. I'm going to be looking for those fish on hard spots, on channel turns, and that's really where I find the most of my fish setting up on a flat side. It's not a bait that I throw super, super shallow. Like I mentioned, this to me is like a low to upper 50-degree range sort of bait. Those fish are starting to get more aggressive. They're starting to move on moving baits. And that's really where I'm going to find most of my success with the flat-sided crankbait, is in that warming water in that 50 to upper 50-degree range when those fish are staging up to get ready to spawn. That's really my overall approach with the flat-sided crankbait. And the rod that I throw it on is either a 7.2 medium rod if I'm throwing that 5 size, or for the most part, it's the 7.4 tactical glass rod from TFO. It's a medium heavy, so it does have a little bit of backbone to it, but I can launch this bait, be really precise with this bait, and put it in the places where I need to put this bait and not be afraid that I'm not going to get it out. Throwing it on a glass rod also helps me kind of connect with more of these fish. When they swipe at it, when they slap at it, when they just kind of mouth the bait and come up behind it, just loads up, and it gives me a little bit more time for that fish to get that bait, as opposed to just pulling it away from him. 15-pound test fluorocarbon line, a 6 speed gear ratio or slower reel. You don't want to throw it on a 7.1. You don't want to throw it on anything higher than like a 6 speed gear ratio reel. Like I said, this is colder water, slightly rising temperatures. They might be aggressive fish, but still all the same, I like to throw it on that medium speed gear ratio reel. And again, man, you cannot go wrong with these colors here. Your Spray Tan or your Spring Craw colors in the Berkeley fritz side. So that's it. What you want to be looking for is those dirtier water conditions. When that water starts to get a little bit more off color, gets a little bit of stain to it, warming water temperatures. You want to be looking for rising water and sort of those hard spots where those fish can set up to get fat and stage up for the spawn. That's what I'm going to be looking for with flat-sided crankbait. Going to be coming soon. This bait's going to be in my hand a lot, especially as I do more largemouth fishing this year, but it also catches big smallmouth as well. If you guys have any questions or comments, you guys want to check out any of the baits that I talk about in today's video, go down, check it out in the description below. Phenomenal bait. I promise if you guys throw this thing around, you're going to catch a lot of fish this spring. It's a tournament, tried, true, and proven bait. So get your hands on some and go fish and catch some fish this spring. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Again, if you guys don't know who I am, my name is Benjamin Nowak. If you're not already subscribed, there's a little red subscribe button down there. Hit that button. Thank you guys as always. Take care, tight lines. God bless. Pursue passion.